Performance advertisers that focus on app installs. October is going to be an interesting month for you. In this episode of the Paid Traffic Forecast, we're going to go through what the forecast shows, the hot spots and cold spots you need to pay attention to. There's a few of them. What the projection models say is likely to happen to your P&L, and the 3 actions you can take to prepare for this month as well as the future. More on that right after this. Hey there, and welcome to the October 2025 Paid Traffic Forecast for App Install Advertisers. I'm John Belcher, the founder here at Decyphered. That's Ross Pietersen, the head of media buying. And we're excited to talk with you about what's around the corner for you for the month of October. Before we dive in, I want to explain what we do here at Decyphered. We help our clients understand and win at the scaling game. Paid traffic is a game. It's a never-ending game of figuring out how to unlock your next level of scale. So it's composed of levels, and so far we found that there are 7 of them. Winning is about having a game plan, so you need clarity about which level you're on so you can focus on taking the right actions. And one of the most important things to winning at this consistently is understanding your cost environment. It has a huge impact on results, and that's exactly why we created this forecast. So let's talk about what you're going to get in this episode. We're going to go through 4 things. What the October outlook is for you, what the last 5 years tell us is likely install for app install advertisers, the hot spots and cold spots you need to pay attention to. I'm going to go through the projection models, what your numbers could look like depending on what you decide to focus on. And then we're going to go through the cost environment playbook, 3 actions you can take to maximize your results now and or prepare for the future. So let's talk about the October outlook. I want to explain how I created this forecast. My job is to create a projection of the P&L for our clients. To do that, I went and analyzed the 5-year meta historicals, CPM trends of the last 5 years for each of the 4 major conversion types for hundreds of millions of dollars in spend. And I created a projection model, and then I tested it. And I found that we could project within about 5% of actual results for clients spending $1 million or more in a month or more in ad spend. And so what's important for you to understand is while we're using metadata, these percentages apply across platforms. We run on a ton of platforms, and we see the same trends on Meta, Google, Native, starting to see it on AppLovin. And so it's just really important you understand, like, this is industry-wide, not just Facebook. And then the most important thing for you to understand is this is a forecast, not a prophecy. We want to give you a good understanding of what's coming up, but things can change. Our goal is just to make sure you're on the lookout at the right times and taking actions to offset any changes. So for you as an app install advertiser in the month of October, we are expecting between the beginning of the month and the end of the month, your CPMs to actually go down 1.3%. But as you can see, there's some chops in here that I'm going to have Ross talk through. But before we get there, as a performance advertiser, I know you don't care about CPMs. You care about your cost per install and your return on investment. What you have to understand is there's a linear correlation between CPM changes and everything that you want to measure on a performance side. And I'm going to prove that to you in our projection section. But before we get there, I want Ross to explain the hot spots and cold spots that are coming up so you can see the things you need to pay attention to and the mistakes you need to avoid making. So Ross, take it away.
So just quickly, hot and cold spots are really just drastic changes in cost in a very short period of time. So a hot spot is a drastic increase and a cold spot is a drastic decrease in a short period of time. For the month of October, we've got 3 important dates. That's the 17th of October, 24th, and the 31st. And let's take a look. And as John said, we're looking at an average decrease overall for the month by 1.3%. However, there is a massive, glaringly obvious camel hump here through the sort of middle towards end of the month, which is going to cause some severe volatility. So on the 17th is an indicator of our first hotspot. That's when costs are going to increase. And on the 24th of October is start of the first cold spot. And then the 31st, heading towards the end of the month, beginning of November, is another cold spot. Let's kind of take a deeper dive and look at what a hotspot feels like. So essentially what that's going to mean is there's a cost increase. You're going to feel like your cost per install is going up, and you're going to start having some underspend. And what that would mean is if you're spending $100 a day on a campaign, you're going to spend $60 a day. So there's the percentage of your daily budget is going to start getting less. if you have cost controls in place, we often refer to that as being in a controlled advertising space. You're either going to see underspend or some of your campaigns are going to stop spending entirely. So the costs are going to be too high. Those guardrails are going to kick in and going to stop that ad campaign from actually running. Let's take a look, John, at some of the risks and mistakes in terms of the hotspots. So essentially in a hotspot, we want to try and avoid wasting budgets and breaking stability. As I referred to just now, if you're an uncontrolled advertiser, so that would be something like on Meta where you're just maximizing conversions. First big mistake is not monitoring your budget usage. As I mentioned just now, if you're spending $100 and all of a sudden you're spending $80 or $60 a day, that means that there's underspend. Big other mistake that you make is trying to push those budgets to try and make up for that underspend. Big mistake, you're really not going to be able to combat this underspending. It's really just the cost environment change. And the last thing for those uncontrolled advertisers is we often hear this, and I've made the mistake myself, is we say, oh, it's just a bad day on Facebook, or we start coming up with conspiracy theories like algorithm changes and things like that. That's why we created this forecast, is we wanted to get an idea of how these CPM cost changes impact our performance. These things happen because of the macro environment effects. The other just high risk in the hotspots, if you're in the controlled advertiser space, big mistake you can make here is actually raising your targets, your costs, your bid caps, things like that. You're starting to mess with the learning. You're also telling the algorithm, I'm willing to spend more. You're now changing the goalpost for the algorithm. Remember, you've gotten to a particular point. You've got a particular performance that you got with your campaign, and now you're changing the goalpost in a higher cost environment. So you're messing with that stability. Same risk with a controlled advertiser, changing those budgets, especially with a controlled advertiser, it's really not going to affect anything. You've got those guardrails in place. You're really just not going to be able to do anything to stop this underspending. And also the last one is just forgetting that only your strong ads are really going to survive and continue delivering during this high cost period. Let's take a quick look at a real world example and what this might look like. You'll see here is a graph. We manage all our accounts on a daily basis. And you'll see here as you're going through the month where there's this orange, we're seeing an underspend. So these are spots through the month where we've seen overall underspend through Facebook, where we've got a particular budget set for that day. And we see sometimes up to 20, 30% underspend because we know that we're experiencing a hotspot at that time. There's a cost increase. So that's very clear and visible. Here's a real life example of how we're managing this on a daily basis.
And one thing to throw in here is we're only showing Facebook, but we do this with all the platforms that we run on. And we see these hotspots are extremely correlated between platforms. They may not match up on the exact same days, but the periods are extremely closely tied. So Facebook, Google, you're seeing the exact same restriction during the exact same windows. It's kind of amazing. So anyway, didn't mean to interrupt.
So to finish off, John, let's have a quick look at what a cold spot feels like. And I want to highlight here that I think in my time as I manage media, the cold spots have actually been more challenging than the hot spots because they're a lot more difficult to control. So what tends to happen is the cost environment changes, costs come down, and typically the ad network now will remove those constraints and you'll start to overspend. Now that might sound like a good thing because you think I'm making up for lost ground, but that overspend, you have no control over that. So all of a sudden you're spending 110, 120% of your budget, and things can really start getting out of control without you knowing it. You can't control how much you're actually spending. And especially in that situation, your cost per install can really start getting out of whack. So let's have a quick look at what kind of mistakes you can make in terms of this cold spot. Firstly, you're risking extending your recovery period here and potentially ruining your entire account stability and its ability to produce results consistently. Uncontrolled advertisers, biggest thing that we'll always reiterate is ignoring your budget utilization. So in these kinds of scenarios, you're going to see, if you're trying to spend $100 a day, you're going to see 110, 120, even up to 150% of your spend. So monitoring that spend utilization is really important. Again, drastic budget changes during these times as a reaction is a terrible idea. This overspend and underspend is going to happen. You need to try and stabilize. The other thing is scaling before the performance stabilizes. If you're changing the budgets while this overspend is happening, you're really adding fuel to the already unstable fire. Last thing to touch on here is in the controlled advertisers, in this sort of bid cap controlled, cost controlled environment, big changes to your budget are going to do nothing. We've found, John, especially with like cost controls, because those guardrails are in place, there's very little you can do by pushing budget up or down. This is really simply going to be what it's going to be. The other thing is rebuilding too fast and trying to scale up too quickly. So generally what happens after this, you're probably going to have to reset and maybe rebuild a campaign. Remember that this is a completely different campaign, different ad ID. So the learning has to go through the same phase again. Scaling up too fast is a big mistake to think that you're going to get to where you were before this windfall and this major overspend that happened. You're going to have to rebuild slowly and carefully after the storm has subsided. Let's take a quick look, John, at what a real life example looks like. And here, this is some of the data that I have been building on a daily basis for an account we're running. And you can see here, we've got almost 140% on some of these ads in terms of overspend. And I'm monitoring this because this is an indication to see what kind of cost environment. Sometimes it varies. You'll see some are relatively spending very well, but across the board, you can see there's a significant overspend here. And this is a good indication of what a real life cold spot looks like. There's been a big cost change and we're heading down the slope and there's some overspend happening. And my job here in terms of media buying is make sure I stabilize the ship, make as few changes as possible to let us weather the storm and get back to stable delivery.
Cool. So I actually want to go back here really quickly. Ross did a really good job of explaining hot spots and cold spots. I just want to take a second to go explain what's going to happen to you during this period. So as Ross said, especially if you're a controlled advertiser, starting on the 17th, plus or minus a couple days, you're going to start getting choked out. And the initial gut reaction is scale up my bids, scale up my budgets, rebuild and relaunch. And what's going to be happening is you're kind of loading the gun for what's going to happen on the 24th. So anything that you do here that's increasing bids, budgets, etc., it's not going to make a difference. And then what's going to happen is once we come off this camel hump, it's just going to completely dump on you. You're going to see over delivery and it's just going to make things worse. And then once again, as we head into the 31st, you're going to see another dump take place as we move into November. So the hard part here that Ross and I talked about with these mistakes is really just showing restraint. We're currently going through this with a client right now where we're talking about, hey, we've got a hot spot coming up and we run things with controlled on Google. We're just going to get choked out. Unfortunately, like we're just going to lose spend, our ability to spend on a lot of our ads, and our production's going to go down. And we don't really have a lever to fight against this. It's just kind of one of the unfortunate things. But if we have to be real, we can go rebuild a bunch of stuff and waste a bunch of money, but that's honestly just not going to make much of a difference. And so Ross did a really good job explaining this. And that's just me trying to come in and say, make sure that you're not making a bunch of wild changes between the 17th and the 24th, because they're really going to cost you as you come down this. If you make all these changes, not understanding like this is just a period you're going to get choked out in. Cool. Ross, thanks for going through that. Now that we've gone through the model stuff, can you talk us through the seasonal trends?
So we always go through every month and have a look at what are the big things, the macro events that are happening and would impact all advertisers. These are generally where big brand advertisers are doing buys on CPM. So they're not using conversion like us performance advertisers, much cheaper CPMs. They're buying up impressions, and those impressions that they're purchasing are ones that we can't get. So we've highlighted 2 events for the month of October, that being our normal end of month cycle, which is between the 25th and the 31st. Now, these, as well as Halloween, you may not be running campaigns that are promotional towards the end of these months, end of the month, but these will impact you or have a high chance of impacting you because of those big buys, those retail buys, those big brand buys, buying up impressions that you can't then get. So we're just highlighting those, just something to look out for. The problem with this, especially for this particular forecast, it backs off straight after that camel hump that we spoke about, which is anticipated for the month of October.
Awesome. Thanks for walking us through that, Ross. Okay, my turn to talking about projection models and spreadsheets. Just to quickly give you an understanding from the projection model, my goal is to view the CPM impact on the P&L. That's really what I care about. A couple of variables that I have to consider every month is the number of selling days and the conversion rate changes historically. So obviously, as we're moving into October from September, we're having one more selling day. So we need to make sure we reflect that. We're likely to have an improvement in, maybe not improvement, an increase in the amount of spend because we have one more selling day. But then we also have to factor, are there seasonal trends that show a change in conversion between October and September that you adjust the models for? So a couple of things you have to consider when you're doing projections. The result of this is to get an understanding from our evergreen production, what can we expect our evergreen proven base of campaigns to produce? And the reason this is important is if you have a goal on a monthly basis, we want to do X amount of revenue. Well, based off what we did last month, do we have a surplus or a delta that we need to go through and make up for? And that's going to determine the monthly focuses. What actions do we need to focus on and how risky can they be? And I'll talk about that in the playbook. But right now, for you to understand, CPMs on the whole are going to be a little bit lower. So if you spend $100,000 in the month of September, if you spend that same amount in the month of October, you're in theory going to reach 1.3% more people. And the reason this is important that CPMs translate to cost per install and ROAS is as you're putting in the same amount of spend, you're going to get more people. Your number of impressions go up. Your CTR is probably not going to change. So you're going to get the same number of clicks, the same number of installs, the same number of activations, the same number of purchases. So you're going to get a better ROI just based off the number of people you're reaching, as long as nothing in this funnel changes. So when I go through and I put together our plan, we've got September, we spent $100,000, and this is what the economics shook out to. I just made this up, and I've got a 2.0 ROAS. Well, obviously, we're not experiencing much of a change. So for the same amount, if we wanted to maintain spend, we're going to get a few more installs. Our cost per install is going to go down slightly, and our ROAS is going to go up slightly. If we want to maintain the exact same number of installs, we're going to choke back on our spend slightly. It'll give us a better cost per install and a better ROAS. Or if we want to maintain the same cost per install, we're going to be able to spend a little bit more and produce that same 2.0 ROAS. So from the projection models, there's not a whole lot of change here. We're going to experience pretty much the same. There's no major delta. Now, this means for us, the conclusion is like our costs are going to be about the same. So we can take these actions that are like medium risk to help us move things forward. And so that's where I want to talk about the cost environment playbook. So what I try and do every month is give you 3 plays that you can consider running to try and help you maximize what you're seeing right now and also prepare for the future if that's the time that makes sense. So in a steady cost environment, we want to take medium risk actions. I'm going to try to give you 3 plays. The first one is the highest lift. This is the one that's going to take the most effort. Then there's medium lift, and then there's low lift, things that can be done relatively quickly. So the high lift play is a strategic PR effort. I want to explain to you how I would look at doing this with PR. And I'm not talking about hiring an agency. This is something you would do internally, but I want to walk through what you would consider doing. Then I want to walk through targeted CRO testing, and then finally proven angle iterations. I'm going to do this using an example brand. So Chime Banking, I'm familiar with fintech. This is something that just made sense to me to go through and leverage. And so when we talk about a strategic PR effort, I'm going to use Chime. I've never seen that hiring a PR agency has been a good investment for companies, and especially since you're performance advertisers, you're going to agree with that. So doing your own strategic outreach can be good. And here's the process. You need to come up with a data point using your specific product. something that's standing out to the market that can be a headline on a newspaper, a publication, what have you. Obviously, we're talking probably about digital news and not newspapers. But I came up with this: 42% of users have stopped saving because their excess cash flow has dried up. So like that's a data point that I would want to extract from our product and say, here's something that would be interesting to a reporter. And then what we're doing is explaining the value prop that we've created to help address this. So because excess cash flow has dried up, we're saying, well, one of the features of Chime is allowing you to get $500 before payday. There's no interest, there's no mandatory fees. You can pay $2 for an instant payout, and there's no credit checks. Plus, just by using Chime, most people improve their credit by an average of 84 points, right? So you have a big problem that's the headline, and then you have your product that's the answer that can help people deal with this. So what you have to do is come up with an argument that's interesting, something that is newsworthy for a reporter to look at. And then you're going to draft an email. You're going to build a list of financial reporters, since we're talking about fintech. And you're going to come up with an email. Savings are down 42%. Do you want the scoop? And the goal here is to get an exclusive with one publication. So if you want to do more than one of these, you have to come up with multiple different stories and multiple value props. But basically what you do is you reach out to the reporter. Hey, I've seen you focus on financial news, so I wanted to reach out to you with an opportunity. Our user data here at Chime shows 42% of users have completely stopped saving because their excess cash flow has dried up. But we've built a feature that's helping them. We want to do an exclusive with one publication to feature this. Let me know if you're interested. So you can send that out to a series of reporters. The more you can personalize, the better. I do almost everything through Loom. So I would just film a video. Hey, Shirley, I recently saw this article from you. I'm the head of whatever at Chime, and I wanted to reach out to you to see if this is something you'd be interested in working with us on. And this is something that, since we're in a steady cost environment, even if they say no, you can start to build relationships with these people that you can turn around and leverage in the future, especially once you get into those higher cost times that they're getting free delivery in one of your highest cost periods, something really simple that you can go through and do. And so starting this process is really valuable. So that's how I would look at the strategic PR. If they go through and do this, you give people a link, it posts them over, and you can measure that. It's a really fantastic way to make these things happen. Second opportunity for you is targeted CRO. So since we're talking about app installs, basically what I would look at here is one of the plays that has worked for us in the past is adding a landing page between the ad and the install is something that has improved conversion rate. So this is a niche scenario, but I want you to kind of try and extrapolate this. Financial apps require installers to go through a process called Know Your Customer, KYC, prior to funding their account, which is their ultimate conversion. If you have angles that are already performing, you can consider testing a tailored landing page that explains the use case prior to driving them to the App Store, because we've proven this increases the number of people completing KYC and funding their account. So using Chime as an example, I grabbed something from their Facebook ad library, join Chime in 2 minutes and earn up to $350,000 or $350. If this drove from here to the app, people would be interested in the offer, but if they didn't know they had to go through KYC, they didn't understand how the process worked, their activation and ultimate conversion probably wouldn't happen. I've seen that before with fintech. So this is what you would look at running. Run your ad to a landing page that goes through and explains the offer more clearly. How do you earn it? What do you have to do? And then you drive them into the app. This is something that drastically improves your ultimate conversion rate. And so this may not apply to every app, but especially if you're in something with finance or productivity, like basically, unless you're a game, this is something that can be really effective to improve your cost per install is going to go up, but this is something that makes your cost per ultimate conversion go down. And once you figure out this process, you can templatize this with your different angles. We used Branch to help us tie together the web data with the app data, but I'm sure you can do it with a different platform. So it requires a little bit of technical setup, but this is something you can test with your proven angles. Can we put in a landing page and improve our overall cost per conversion? That can make a really big difference. Final play is proven angles to iteration. So running we want to basically be able to get to the spot where we can develop more versions of proven winners. And this is future proofing. So something that Ross and I do when we get in higher cost times is focusing on deploying more ads to appease the platforms because they like new content. But we don't want to be spending a bunch of money on unproven angles because A, the costs are higher, which means that our chances of success are lower. So now, since we're in a steady cost environment, you can stockpile these iterations, and you'll know that the performance should be pretty consistent because it's already proven. So we've used an N8N automation, which I'll show you here in just a second, to ingest all of our performing angles and develop iterations, scripts, and voiceovers. And this has allowed our video editing team to turn out 15 videos a week while we only launch 6, so we can stockpile 36 ads in a month. And so just an example of the workflow, I've just got this manually set up. When I push this, it executes a SQL query that has a certain set of parameters. So it goes and pulls the angle numbers and the video, the spend, the sales. So I just basically set parameters. From these, it'll download our files from Google Drive. It'll transcribe the videos for recording. It'll plug it into an agent, which has a specific prompt that will develop iterations of each script. And then we use an HTTP request to kick it over to 11 Labs to get us back the voiceovers. That way, we've got our scripts and our voiceovers that we can package and send to our video editor to get things completed. And Creative Strategy doesn't have to do anything with this. So pretty cool process, something that's been really effective. Ross, do you want to touch on what's a difference this has made for us?
Yeah, having these ads ready to go and having a backlog has been really helpful. When we get into a higher cost period, when we're chasing a goal and we need some extra bullets in the chamber, as you always say, this has been really helpful. Low lift, low resource, the creative team is not having to commit a lot of time to it. These are stockpiled, ready to go. And this has been really helpful just to know that I've got a whole bunch of ads that I can launch if and when I need them. So this has been really handy from a media buying perspective.
Awesome. So that's my goal, is to give you 3 plays that you can focus on this month to maximize your results now and prepare for higher cost times. Looking at strategic PR outreach, targeted CRO, and proven angle iterations. I hope these are valuable things. Leave a comment down below and let me know if you thought this was valuable. And that's what we've got for you for the month of October. So we wish you the best of luck, and we look forward to talking to you again next month. Thanks for watching this month's paid traffic forecast. Just by watching it, you and your team now know what to expect from your overall performance and the hot spots and cold spots you need to pay attention to over the next 30 days. If you want to be this prepared every month, there's 2 things you can do. First, you can subscribe or follow our social channels so this information shows up in your feed at the beginning of every month. Second, if you want the information early, you can subscribe to our free list where you'll get the information delivered to your inbox a day ahead of time. If there's something you think we can do to improve our monthly update, just drop us a comment below and let us know what you think that is. And finally, if you're a business owner looking for someone who can help you develop an advertising ecosystem that produces more sustainable, predictable scale, make sure to head over to Decyphered.com/start. On that page, you'll understand how our process works and the steps you can take to see if we might be a good fit to help you. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next month.